It all began 10 years ago. So we started off with a small tomato greenhouse. Our garden was small as well, producing only a few baskets for the first year. We were determined to make it work and decided to study at an organic farming school for 3 years. It was a big program, and this allowed us to really hone our skills into how to start a farming business, basically. Our second year of gardening, we invested in a yang seeder in order to save a lot of time. The yang seeder allowed us to sow carrots without having to do it by hand. Let me just get the snow off this greenhouse. Alright, maybe we'll get a little bit more peace and quiet here. So the yang seeders saved us a lot of time because sowing carrots by hand is really time consuming. Since then, we bought 2 more yangs and built it into a 3-row yang seeder. This really allowed us to sow straight lines of vegetables, and it really helps with the mechanical weeding with tractors. I'll cover more of mechanical weeding in a future video. So after finishing school, we found a small job that allowed us to continue working on our future farm. So what we did was we went and scoped out the land and found a good portion of the land that's not too sloped, 1.5 hectares, and we removed all the bushes. There was one tree in the way, so we had to chop that down and remove the roots. And so by clearing everything, we made room for our first garden. And so what we learned in school was greenhouse growing is not necessary, but it helps to have more produce in the beginning of the season. So we're in zone 4B up in Canada, so we get frost up until sometimes beginning of June. So we have to be careful at what we sow and when we sow it. So we found a used greenhouse and we decided to purchase it. It's a 30 by 100 greenhouse. It was missing a few materials, so we had to purchase some missing stuff. Now, we had nothing on the land. No electricity, no building, so no cold rooms. If you're gonna have vegetables, you're gonna need a cold room. Since we live on 225 acres, we have a lot of forests. In order to cut costs, we decided to go into the forest, chop down the trees we needed. So we made 2x6s and all the other types of wood that we needed for the construction. We had planned to build a building of 34 by 44, roughly 1,500 square foot, and 12-foot ceilings, which ended up being 13-foot ceilings. So the build started in September 2016, and so we figured out where we wanted the building to be. We didn't want it to be too far away from the electricity as well, so we chose that spot depending on how flat the surface was. So we excavated a lot of the dirt, brought in some sand, compacted that, and so we ended up building on that. Things didn't go as planned, so we ended up having to build our own trusses and a second floor, which required us to go back to the forest and get more wood. On the second floor, we had built our truss template. At some point the next day, we came back and there was already 6 inches of snow. Since we started building the trusses in November, so I had to shovel all that in order for us to build more trusses. So once the trusses were all installed, we went and installed 1x4s in order for us to be able to screw in the metal roof. Since the building took longer than expected to build, we ended up finishing the metal roof in January of 2017. And now we didn't get to pour the concrete right away because we wanted in-floor heating, and we didn't have our outdoor wood boiler yet, and we needed to start the growing season. So I built a tiny house inside the unfinished, unheated barn in January. It was cold, but we managed to build it, insulate it, and then that's where we started our plants for the first year. After the greenhouse was done, because we were working on the greenhouse whenever we had to wait for help for the garage, we worked a little bit on the greenhouse. And then once the garage was done, then we started finishing up the greenhouse. So we installed the dull poly eventually in February, I believe, and then the snow started to melt inside. After the snow was melted, we installed the heating system inside the greenhouse. And so in April, we moved all the plants from inside the tiny house into the greenhouse for the first time and started to live inside the unfinished tiny house. That's another story. So as the years go by, at the end of 2018, when we finished our second real growing season, because the actual certified business name was in 2017, where we got our organic certification as well. So that year went by, and then at the end of 2018, we're like, let's build another greenhouse in order to have more produce earlier on in the season. I wanted to get a time lapse of the build. I only got the time lapse of the excavation. We started our second greenhouse. We chose a spot and we hired someone for the excavation. We didn't have enough time to build it during the summer, so we built it in fall and finished it in February. So when I went to do the time lapse for the lifting of the arches, well, my camera actually fell over, so I didn't get that footage. Once the snow all melted, we rented a small excavator that could fit through the greenhouse door, and we leveled the soil inside the greenhouse. That did a little bit of compaction, and so we had to decompact the soil. So that took a lot of time too. Please leave a like if you liked, and I'll see you later.